that you have. First song tonight be number 168. 168. We'll sing the first and last verses of this song. All right, let's all sing. Walk your sunlight on my journey over the mountains through the deep vale. Jesus said, I'll never forsake thee, promising mine that never can fail. Heavenly sunlight, flooding my soul with glory divine.
Matthew 7, 13 through 14. Christ says, "Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction. And there are many who go in by it. Because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it." Christ is bringing to a conclusion his Sermon on the Mount. And here he had before him probably hundreds, or not thousands, of individuals that were listening to the lesson that he gave, and many were impressed. Many just couldn't believe what they were hearing. And he was telling these Christians several things about life and about doctrine as well. He talked about the Beatitudes and how one is the salt of the earth, and also one is the light of the world. He talked about murder. He talked about adultery, divorce, retaliation, love, giving, prayer, judging, the golden rule. And he tells them all these things. He brings it into a conclusion by saying, now you have a choice. You can listen to what I just told you and you can follow this, or you can rebel against it and go your own way. But he gave the individuals a choice, and he said you can either take the wide road, the wide gate, the broad way, or you can take the narrow gate, the narrow way. But the choice is up to them as to what they would take. So here they put before the people a decision they have to make. Which road are we going to take? Which gate are we going to enter in when it comes to the ways that Christ here has just taught? So what are they going to do? Now the thing about it is, when it comes to this particular verse, these verses as he brings to a conclusion, there's several things that they understood maybe in a better way than what we do. Because they lived there, they understand the terminology of what was taking place or what Christ was speaking about. And Christ is not just talking about a wide gate. He's not just talking about a narrow gate, but this terminology brought to mind them something there in Jerusalem. For example, here he says again, for the wide gate and the broad way is a way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. He is making reference here, Christ is, to the great wall around Jerusalem. And it certainly was a great wall. It wasn't just some 2x4 wall with brick on the outside we might be accustomed to. This was a major wall, in some places up to 50 foot thick, in some places up to at least 50 foot high. Individuals would build their houses inside of this wall. They would have chariot races on top of this wall. So this is no minor wall that Christ is talking about here. And when he says the broad way, he is speaking about the gate there that people would enter or exit throughout Jerusalem. They had one main gate, and that's how people would come in. Around that gate, there'd be people there doing business. It was a major hub of the city. The gate, people would come and go. And on the Sabbath day, they would close these gates so individuals wouldn't be tempted to leave and break the law of God when it came to travel. So when he says, enter by the wide gate, broad is the way, they quickly put into their thought that gate there on the wall of Jerusalem, a very broad and wide way to enter into Jerusalem. Now, we sometimes as well use the word broad in describing things. We might say, well, a street is a broad street. I mean, it's pretty wide. We might say where a musical or performance is performed at, we might call it Broadway. We might call something some type of communication, a broadcast. We might call somebody broad-minded, or it may be that you've been in a wreck before and you got hit broadsided. And we understand that. So when somebody would use the word broad in terms that we understand, we quickly know what they're talking about. Well, here when Christ said that broad is the way, the people quickly understood he is meaning that gate. The gate there in the wall of Jerusalem where so much traffic is going in and out. So he makes reference to this gate. Easy way to get into Jerusalem. The most visible way to get into Jerusalem. You had no limit as far as what you could bring in or carry out. If you were on a cart, no problem. If you were pulling a wagon, no problem. If you had several of you together, there was no problem. Come in and out of this gate. So therefore, when he thinks about this, they're thinking that gate. And what is he meaning by that gate? But he says concerning this gate here that it leads to destruction. For those who enter in this gate, there are going to be many that will go that way, and many are going to find doom when they enter. So did they really understand the salvation part? I don't know. But they certainly understood the gate part. If you go in that gate, you're going to have problems with God. And then we see again, verse 13, he uses the narrow gate. Enter by the narrow gate in verse 13. Verse 14, because narrow is the gate, and difficult is the way that leads to life, and there are few who find it. Now, in addition to this wide gate that they had there in the wall, where everybody could go and enter as they wanted, in certain locations around this wall that was 50 foot tall, 50 foot wide in places, you had a small opening at the bottom. And if you wanted to, you could crawl through those openings and enter the gate. If you're maybe coming up on the opposite side of where the gate was, you could go in and get on your belly and crawl through it. It was a very small, narrow opening that you could crawl through. And it was made that way for a reason. Because they were made for one person only. You couldn't have a backpack in order to crawl through there. You couldn't carry any luggage with you. So therefore, it was small for the reason if the enemy were to attack, this enemy, if one person can only at a time get through there, if he's trying to come through, he couldn't be carrying his armor with him. And if you knew he was coming through, you'd be on the inside waiting for him. And when he stuck his head through, you cut that head off. Man, it was a suicide mission for anybody in the army trying to attack to go through this little narrow entrance. So therefore, it was well camouflaged. You had to know where it was in order to enter into it. And therefore, it wasn't an easy thing to do. And Christ says concerning salvation, it's going to be difficult. If you decide to go through this small gate, which leads to life, there's going to be some difficulties with that. Meaning, when one becomes a Christian, you need to understand that, or at least before you become a Christian, one should understand that there's going to be times of difficulty. It's not always going to be a bed of roses. It's going to have difficult days, difficult circumstances that you're going to have to deal with. So he's trying to tell the people up front, if you choose to follow me, you're going to have your difficulties. It's not going to be that easy. Now, another where Matthew talks here, the King James Version, he calls it the straight gate. S-T-R-A-I-T. Well, straight or narrow, they were known by that. It was known by that name. These small places underneath the foundation, you might say, of this wall. Again, it's not straight as in straight as an arrow. It's straight and how it's called, given this name. So here Christ, when he says, ends up this teaching that he's given here on Sermon on the Mount, when he tells them here about salvation, again, he's telling them it's going to be difficult. It'd be difficult to put into practice what I've just taught you on this Sermon on the Mount about don't kill, about no adultery, about you're the light of the world, about the Beatitudes. He's telling them all these things here about this. But he says, if you choose to do this, if you choose to follow me, you're going to have to enter in through the straight gate, through the narrow gate. That means one at a time. When it comes to salvation, we are saved one at a time. We're not saved in bunches, and we're not saved even as a nation. We're not saved as a group in a city or a state or even our families. When it comes to salvation, we're saved one at a time. Just like only one person at a time could go through this straight gate or this narrow gate, when it comes to salvation, it's one at a time. Now, we do find examples where individuals were taught, maybe families or groups based on Pentecost, when 3,000 were saved, but yet it was still one at a time that they were saved. And so it was an individual decision that each one had to make, and they made that decision, and they became Christians. So what's wrong with entering the broad way? That certainly Christ said it was going to be the easiest way. But why is it wrong when it comes to the broad way? Well, Exodus 23:2 says, "Thou shalt not follow a crowd to do evil. nor shall you testify in a dispute so as to turn aside after many to pervert justice. Moses here says, beware of the crowd. The crowd is going to go the easy way. The crowd is going to follow maybe the evil course, the way of least resistance. Beware of the crowd. And we know that. We have seen example after example of a group, a crowd that gets in trouble, and well, stay away from those. Stay away from the crowd. He's telling us, beware of this. And yet, for the most part, I think that the crowd that heard his lesson that day, Christ, a majority of them probably said, this is foolish. Who wants to live this way? Who wants to be poor in spirit? How can that be a blessing? Who wants to be a mourning individual? How can that be a blessing? How can being meek get you anywhere in life? Why do I have to turn the other cheek? I want to take out revenge. Immorality, that's so much fun. Marriage, why not just have a mate today and another one tomorrow and exchange mates, all this? I don't want to be married to the same person forever. Why is it wrong to tell a lie? You mean, what do you mean I've got to love my enemies? And on it goes. As Christ was telling them this, I think many, the crowd, the group of that individuals that were listening, they were saying, I don't want this. I don't want it. And Christ was saying, that's okay. Take the wide road that leads to destruction, but if you decide to follow me, it's going to be a narrow way. It's going to be a straight gate. It's going to be difficult at times to follow, but yet the reward is certainly going to be worth it. In the parallel verse that Christ gives in Luke 13:24, he says, strive to enter through the narrow gate, for many, I say to you, will seek to enter and will not be able. A little different twist on here. Strive means that's something we're going to have to strive to do. It's not going to be easy. But he also says here that there are going to be those who will seek to enter this narrow gate. But for whatever reason it may be, they will not be able to enter. Well, they want to go. How many people don't want to go to heaven? Well, there's probably a few out there that, have this warped understanding of what Satan is all about, and they'd rather follow him than the Lord. But for the most part, everybody you talk to, they want to go to heaven. But Christ says here, again, there are going to be those who are going to seek to go, but they will not be able. Why will they not be able? Well, a few reasons here. One, because many want to follow the crowd. How can the crowd be wrong? All those people. How could all those people be going in the wrong direction? And often we see that. We see numbers of individuals going in the wrong direction, get in trouble over it, and well, things would have been better if they just let the crowd go on and they go their own separate way. But in the case of what Christ is wanting to tell us here, again, the crowd is wrong. Be careful of the crowd. Just because there's large numbers there doesn't mean they're always right. Again, we look at large number, well, all those people can't be wrong. Why not? They can be wrong. Christ says beware of that. Another reason why many will not be able to enter, number two, many won't enter unless someone enters with them. I've known of individuals that will say, well, I'll become a Christian when so-and-so does. On the buddy system, I guess. That's how they're thinking of it. Some might say, well, if my spouse will, then I will. Well, again, that's not the way that it's about. It's individual. We are to become children of God if we want to, regardless of what the person around us is thinking, because we're going to be standing before God as individuals. We're not going to stand before God as a nation or as a group of friends. We're not going to stand before God beside our spouse or our family. We're going to stand before God as individuals, and we're going to have to give an account of what we're doing. It's going to be personal. So many won't enter unless somebody goes with them. But remember, this narrow way, it's one person and one person only. Number three, many want to carry other items with them. They just refuse to give up their worldly living. Oh, I want to be a Christian. or maybe have that name, yeah, I'm a Christian, but when it comes to the way they're living, they're not willing to give up the world or the ways of the world. Well, you can't do it. Going through that narrow way, the backpack's got to be left alone behind, and it's just you. Excuse me, just you that's going through this, but yet there are many who simply are unwilling to leave sin behind, and that's not good. So, again, many will, they want to go, but they're not going to be able because they're not going to leave it behind. A fourth reason why some will not be able to go, they're just too easy. They're too lazy. They want the easy way, the easy entrance. Was it easy for Christ to go to the cross? He wasn't looking forward to the pain and the agony of going to the cross. Now, he was looking forward to going because of what it was going to do for mankind. But as far as going through the suffering, he did not look forward to that at all. Being a Christian is not for the lazy person. Some individuals just want to be lazy about it, just do the very, very minimum that they got to do in order to acquire that of heaven. But it's not about that. Too many individuals want to go the easy way, and that won't work. And then number 5, many are unwilling to humble themselves. They just got too much pride. They're not willing to get down on their hands and knees and belly and crawl through that narrow opening. I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to get dirty. I'm not going to get dirty in my fingernails. Here to go with all the reasoning. I'll just go the easy way. I'll go through that wide way, and there I'll just walk on in with everybody else. Everything will be just fine. But yet what the Lord is telling us, there's got to be humility if we're going to follow him. So we got to ask ourselves, when it comes to the way of the Lord, which door are we choosing? Which gate are we choosing? Which way are we choosing? Is it the easy way? Is it the wide way? Again, we got to examine ourselves as Christians because each of us is traveling this road, this path, and one day we're going to stand before God, and one day we'll give an account. And we don't want to hear the Lord say, well, you took the wrong road. You took the wrong gate. You went the easy way. No, we want to hear the well done, good and faithful servant. You went through the narrow way. I told you it's going to be difficult, but you knew that. You knew the struggles that were there. You disciplined yourself to make sure that you remained faithful. And now the reward is for you. And that's certainly what we want to hear. So when it comes to what Christ said here, as he summed up the Sermon on the Mount, all the people understood. How many followed the wide road, we're not sure. Probably more than the others. Some did. Some looked at his teachings and found his teachings to be fascinating, and they became followers, and that's what we want to be. When it comes to teachings of Christ, may we be followers of what he has laid out before us. Tonight, as a Christian, you can see that the wide road, the wide gate is what you've been following, and you need to turn it around and begin that narrow way and follow our Lord through that way, and it will have its moments, it will have its difficulties, but again, the end certainly will be worth it all. If you're not a Christian, will not be baptized into Christ tonight, know the commitment that it takes, understand I'm going to make that commitment, I'm going to follow through with it as the Lord will have me to do. If that need is there tonight, come as we stand and sing our invitation. With God. For Jesus. back Wednesday night, 7 o'clock for our midweek service.